Hey guys, so today I have swatches of the Lights Lacquer Your Nails But Better Shears collection. There are 6 polishes in this collection, different shades of sheer jelly polishes. These are available right now, so I will link the Lights Lacquer website down below where you guys can check these out. I do also have a coupon/affiliate code with Lights Lacquer, so I will have that up on the screen and in the description box. 6 polishes altogether, and I will get into the swatches. And these are the new nail art stickers that also dropped with this collection. The first polish is called Mrs. Potts, and this is described as a white pink polish with peachy undertones. So good formula on this one. It really doesn't look like much on the first coat because it is such a sheer shade. These jellies go on and build pretty evenly on their own. They level themselves out pretty nicely, but I am still doing thin coats and I am putting some polish back in the bottle periodically here just to make sure that I don't have any streaks, because while this isn't a tricky polish, I still want to be careful. The color built up pretty nicely on the second and third coat. There really is no cover completely for this style of polish, but I was happy with it. So that is 3 coats of Mrs. Potts. The next polish is called Mrs. Darling, and this is described as a ballet slipper pink nude. So good formula, same as the last polish, a little bit more coverage on that first coat because it is a slightly, just ever so slightly deeper shade. Again, trying to do as thin of coats as possible and even put some of that extra polish back in the bottle because I don't want to do too thick of a coat and create uneven spots. The thinnest coats that you can do are the key with sheer jellies, especially nudes. And again, the color built up really nicely. So that is 3 coats of Mrs. Darling. The next polish is called Mrs. Jones, and this is described as a cool-toned nude with pink undertones. Again, great formula, also pretty even. I will say, like on a scale of 1 to 10, as far as sheer nudes go, with 10 being like the most perfect, even, self-leveling sheer nude that I've ever used, and 1 being unusable, I would put these at like an 8. Maybe a 7, it's like in between a 7 and an 8, 7.5. Same strategy as the other polishes, thin coats and then really floating the brush on that last coat. And I like that you can wear these in 1, 2, or 3 coats to do completely different looks. You're not having to do 3 coats to cover up flaws in the first 2 coats. So that is 3 coats of Mrs. Jones. The next polish is called Mrs. Wheeler, and this is described as a deep tan with pink undertones. Again, good formula, good coverage on this one as well. On that first coat, the colors are getting deeper, so the coverage is going to get a little bit better. And also making sure to do thin coats and put any extra polish back in the bottle. Now this one, it started to get a little uneven at the tip of my nail for me on that second coat. I don't know what it was. I could just see that it was not as even right at the tip where my nail line was. It's very minor and I really can't even see it on my footage now. I just wrote it down in my notes because I know if you have a much longer nail with more white nail line showing, it's going to be more noticeable. This also builds up more opaque in 3 coats than previous shades in the collection. So that is 3 coats of Mrs. Wheeler. The next polish is called Mrs. Robinson, and this is described as a hazelnut brown. Another good formula, more opaque on the first coat than previous shades in the collection. Again, I did a very thin first coat just to make sure that everything was as even as possible. Again, with this one I had where it just looked slightly uneven on that second coat at the very tip of my nail. And like I said for the last polish, it's not that big of a deal if you have shorter nails, but if you have longer nails, that's going to be way more obvious. I could still see that a little bit in the third coat because this one didn't seem quite as opaque in 3 coats as the last polish was, but again, my nails are short, so it wasn't a huge deal for me personally. Your results may vary. So that is 3 coats of Mrs. Robinson. The next polish is called Mrs. Bennet, and this is described as a rich brown with purple undertones. Great formula, again, nice thin coats. The shades, as they get a little bit darker, they all have that slight unevenness at the nail line. I keep saying that, but I do want to kind of pound the point home that it's not like some huge flaw. It's just something to point out. It might be an issue depending on your application if your nails are a lot longer, but for the majority of these polishes, it's almost unnoticeable by the time you get to the third coat. And a good way to counter that would also just to be take your last coat, whether you're going to do 2 or 3, and just do that thicker. Thin first, thin second, thicker third, you're good. This one actually did cover completely for me in 3 coats, so that is 3 coats of Mrs. Bennet. So for me, personally, I like Mrs. Potts the best out of all of these on my own nails, because I used to try to always match my actual skin tone with a nude polish so it would just blend completely like the mannequin hands look. And lately, I think if it's going to be a sheer nude jelly, I prefer something that's a little bit lighter than my skin, so it stands out a little bit more but still is very neutral. Where if I were going for that mannequin hands look where I wanted the color on my nails to match almost exactly to my skin, I would go more for something like Mrs. Jones. So that is the Lights Lacquer Your Nails But Better Shears collection. Again, I will link the Lights Lacquer website down below where you guys can check these out. I do have a coupon/affiliate code with Lights Lacquer, so I will have that on the screen and in the description box. Hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I will talk to you later.